EWTN Live. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and this is a program where we bring you guests from all over the world. Just also want to mention that today is the feast of Saint Stanislaus, Bishop and Martyr, who was martyred by the King of Poland for defending the rights of the poor. So he's a great bishop and one of the patrons of Poland. And Pope St. John Paul used to pray in a pew facing his casket, which is at the main altar of the cathedral in the Wawel Castle. And that was the place where he used to go and pray a lot. And it was a great inspiration for him and should be for us as well. Now we have a guest tonight, of course. He is here to help us make some good sense out of the world that we find ourselves in today. In today's world, all of us know it seems right and wrong is different for every different individual, and that the real truth is represented not by the solid rock of Jesus Christ, but by a squishy sponge of our own feelings. What does it mean to be, quote, living the good life, as they say, when it's harder and harder to find what good even means? And if they do know what it means, they're not sharing the good. So please welcome the director of the Center for Thomistic Studies at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, who is also the author of a brand new book called Living the Good Life, a Beginner's Thomistic Ethics. Please welcome Dr. Stephen J. Jensen. Dr. Jensen, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
So, a philosopher, eh? How do you like doing that work?
I love philosophy. I love teaching.
Yeah.
You understand the world in a much deeper way when you delve into the philosophical problems.
I oftentimes tell folks, because not that many people study much philosophy. It's not as common. In some ways, it used to be normal for Catholics to think along the lines of St. Thomas. I mean, not just college kids and professors, but I remember reading a story about cops discussing Thomistic principles and the way they lived out the law. It was just the way that people thought. And this is something that folks fail to understand, that there are philosophical ideas that are running the way everybody in the world thinks. Like I mentioned, if you think there is no truth, or that you cannot know what is good, or maybe the good is totally relative, that's philosophy right there. So you, on the other hand, are using the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas. Why St. Thomas?
Why St. Thomas? Well, there's a lot of confusion in the world today. Yeah. And St. Thomas has a pretty good way of hitting on the truth, let's say. Mm-hmm. He was a brilliant thinker. Most people are familiar. He lived in the 13th century. And at a very young age, the age of 5, he was supposed to have been asking what God is like. Mm-hmm. He would write maybe 3 or 5 books at a time with secretaries. He'd dictate one book to one secretary and then turn to the next. So he wrote profoundly, deeply on questions that mattered. And we might say, well, yeah, that was, hundreds of years ago. What does that have to do with our world today? The fact of the matter is that ideas have consequences, mm-hmm. important consequences. Pope Leo XIII in 1879 issued the encyclical Aeterni Patris. We're familiar with the idea of a social encyclical, talking about contemporary social problems in the world. What people might be surprised to learn is this was actually the first social encyclical in which he said there are lots of problems that our world faces because bad philosophy has permeated the state and come down to the level of the masses. And his solution to the social problem wasn't change the economic system or anything along that line. It was study St. Thomas Aquinas.
And so folks understand, too, when he's talking about how philosophical ideas were having a bad effect. We see the French Revolution was inspired by a number of philosophers, the most dangerous of whom was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. His philosophy, it's not what he said to do, but his philosophy inspired the reign of terror under Robespierre. And nationalism that came out of the French Revolution was part of philosophy at the time. And these ideas led to the worst wars in Europe up to that time. And the clash of ideas continued all the way into World War I and World War II, where philosophy of Marx and of Nietzsche and other philosophers, their ideas became behind forces that caused incredible death and destruction.
Absolutely. The 19th century, when Leo XIII was writing, was an age where people had this notion of just progress. Everything is always getting better and better and better. I think, we came across World War I and World War II, and people started realizing, no, things aren't getting better and better. Yeah. And as you say, the Nazis and Hitler really admired Nietzsche, for instance, yep. who spoke of a will to power. And Hitler saw himself as the Übermensch, the man who realizes this will to power.
And Übermensch is the German word for Superman.
Right, which doesn't come off well with the comic book story, but a grand, superior human being, yeah.
Right, so. Right. And I think Hitler as Superman doesn't fit me, my image of any kind of Superman, but that's what he was promoting, and along with other ideas. And this is something where, we need then to have a philosophy to teach us how to think through the problems and not just react emotionally. We want to think about what is wrong with the ideas of Karl Marx, what's wrong with the ideas of Nietzsche, and then of these Nazis, communists, and other people. Right. That's what you're trying to do, isn't it?
Precisely. I mean, that's why Aquinas is important for us today, mm-hmm. and in my book, I'm picking a small area of Aquinas and showing how it applies on an everyday basis too. I mean, we're talking big world schemes, but in each of our own lives, we face this own problem of trying to live by our feelings and not really thinking through things.
Well, again, right now we don't see the Nazi Party, and we don't see, communism has collapsed. Most communist countries have had their final clearance closeout sales on statues of Marx and Lenin. It didn't work out very well at all. But today, it's what I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that people think, well, I've got my truth, and that's for me. I can't make anybody else think what I think. And why is that a problem?
Well, I mean, I think probably the area we'd see it most dramatically would be within the domain of sexual ethics. Mm-hmm. So the fact that people would be using contraception, and really as a follow-up to contraception, abortion. Right. So you get a kind of murder that's resulting from people saying, well, I want my sex, I want to fulfill my desire.
But I don't want the baby that comes with it.
Right. And of course, we get all sorts of really far out extreme views with transgender and so on. Mm-hmm. And I think you see in those domains some of the fear of totalitarianism as well again, because in our society, to oppose the sort of agenda, the kind of sexual agenda that's out there, a lot of times people will be silenced for even suggesting that there might be something wrong with it.
Yeah, see, is a serious issue. That because people are not learning how to think through the principles of what makes something good or makes something lack good and then become evil. They're not thinking through that clearly, but they're emotional. And I want to get my way. And especially when they get into politics, they get very, very aggressive.
Absolutely.
And they think that instead of arguing well, they can win the argument by arguing loudly, forcefully, and with more anger. Is that a good idea?
Well, if what you want is to get your way, that might work, I suppose. But Aquinas will tell us, what's really more fundamentally important is seeking human fulfillment. So you can say, well, I want this way of life and I'm going to yell my way to get it. In the end, there won't be any true satisfaction. Part of what's missing here in the contemporary culture is an understanding of human nature. That's why you can go off and do whatever you want. I mean, you're talking about knowing good and things like that. The whole notion of the good depends upon having an idea of a nature, indeed a more particular functional nature. A very simple example, say you have a carving knife. Well, a good carving knife is sharp, right? How do you know? Well, you know it because the carving knife has a certain kind of nature, so to speak. It's the nature of something to cut. It's a functional nature. So too, we say an eye. A good eye sees well. It's because we know what the function of an eye is. We don't typically talk about, a good rock or something like that, unless we planned on using it to maybe throw at somebody. It might be good for throwing or something like that, but just a good rock.
A good rock could also be found in a diamond store.
That's because it has a function there too,
That's
though.
right. It
has a function of revealing beauty. Excuse me. So all of these depend upon the idea of something that has a kind of function. And so if what we get as an idea of a human being is we're just sort of a cosmic accident, a collection of matter that happens to have various desires, then you really can't say that one way of life is better than another way of life. And that's where these people are at, and that's why they're so confused. But the fact of the matter is they do have a nature, and they will not satisfy it through their angry, emotional ways.
That sense that, everything in the universe is an accident. And, our existence as a human race on this little planet and this mediocre sun and a mediocre galaxy, and, you hear that as a way to sort of, it's no big deal. Even big thinkers like Stephen Hawking, God rest his soul, but, he would say things like that and as if that were profound, and it's not. He's a great thinker in many ways, but there's also a lack of profundity to understand what is it to be human.
If anything's profound there, it's profound despair, it would seem to me.
Yes.
I mean, if there's nothing to live for, then indeed, why go on?
Yeah, and that's the way a lot of folks have. You have a lot of people committing suicide, and now the greater tragedy is that they try to kill other people right before they kill themselves, so that they at least get in the newspaper.
Yeah,
That's
to have a kind of glorious death, you might say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fundamentally here. The issue is our nature is a spiritual nature. So we're going to be fulfilled through spiritual activities, and the worldly things, money and pleasure and fame and glory, those things ultimately will not satisfy the human heart.
No. And when you say that humans ultimately have a spiritual nature, how can we come to that conclusion?
Well, we can do so by faith. I've written a philosophy book, okay? So philosophy steps back from faith, doesn't contradict faith, but it tries to look at the world around us and observe things, just like science, and from that reach conclusions. So you might, by faith, indeed it's very good by faith to know that we have a spiritual good. But we can also know it by observing our human activities. So the fact that human beings have reason. You can look and you can observe a dramatic difference between animals and human beings. And as you examine that difference in greater detail, you come to recognize that human beings have a special capacity of reason, and they have a special desire, I guess Aquinas would call it, the desire of the will, which is a spiritual desire. And these two things, really, which make us to be made in the image and likeness of God, these two things are what are truly distinctive of us and what will truly fulfill us.
And that doesn't mean that we put down the animals. We still think of them as wonderful and beautiful. And a key element, a series of key elements in a complex environment, and they're wonderful. But we are able to have a sense of wonder at how they all fit into the global environment. And they only want to know, will it eat all the food? Will it try to kill me and eat me? And do I need to run from it? Or do I need to chase it, make it my food? That's what's on the animals' minds.
Precisely.
They're a lion, they say, gazelle. If you're a gazelle, lions, and then just run. And they don't have a sense, so amazing the balance between lions and gazelles. They don't see that.
No, and you might, what you're saying basically is that animals do give glory to God, and they reflect the goodness of God. God
Absolutely.
created them.
Yep.
But none of them know God. None of them can reflect and recognize that they're created by God. And that takes us. So we see the animals, and we really complete the animals' purpose as well, because we see the animals and see them as coming from God. And so we take the reflection of God and order it back to their source, to the source, which is God.
And we also, not only do we have a reason that makes us superior to them, but we use our reason to help have a sense of understanding them better than they can understand themselves. And we can do a better job, if we work at it, to maintain a proper balance of the animals in an environment than they could. This is something that, we have, that's a great gift. And it's not just for our selfish reasons. And that gets us to another element of being spiritual, because the reason is part of it. But we also have free will by which we make good or bad decisions. That's part of being spiritual, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's important to distinguish in our desires between the emotions and the will. The emotions are sort of what are loudest within us, I would say, for the most part. They're really making demands upon us, and we're all familiar with being angry, with having strong desires, with being embarrassed, with being afraid. And these emotions really pull and tug at us in various ways.
Well, they're all rooted in the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we're more than the body, right? So we are also spiritual, and that spiritual desire is the will. Now, the bodily desires, part of the reason we pay a lot of attention to them is because they are bodily and we feel them. And the way we're made, we do pay more attention to the bodily. I mean, we pay more attention to the things around us than to God, who's not bodily, but we should be paying more attention to God, who's spiritual. And it's the same thing within us. We pay more attention to our fear, our anger, rather than to our spiritual desires, which don't have this bodily element and they can't be felt. I mean, we're aware of them with our reason, but we don't feel them in our bodies.
And this is something that, again, the mind and the free will are intimately connected, that they need each other. And maybe if you explain a little bit why the will requires a rational mind, an ability to think.
So again, all desires really follow upon some kind of understanding or other. Even the desire for pizza follows from an understanding of what pizza is, that it tastes good or something like that. And even animals who have no real profound understanding at least know that, well, this tastes good or something along that line. So there is always some kind of awareness that's preceding desire. And when it comes to spiritual desire and the will, that awareness is going to have to be a spiritual awareness. It's going to have to be reason. So with our reason, we can understand what is good and what is evil. With our senses, our imagination, we don't understand that. So with the reason, we can come to understand what's good and evil. And so that's what's very important, that the will then follow upon our understanding. Right.
The mind helps us to know that we have options besides simply following our bodily impulses.
Precisely. So
I can know that, I'm hungry, but I can also know that it's wrong for me to steal food from somebody else. In order that my hunger is not supreme. There's also this other factor of being honest.
Right. Whereas the animal has only the desire that's there at the moment. We've got this understanding. Following upon the understanding, we have a kind of desire, but as I say, it's not this feeling. It's a desire in the will. And what we really have to do is pay more attention to those spiritual goods perceived by reason and the spiritual desires that follow upon them.
And again, that doesn't mean that the bodily desires are evil.
No, it does not. Aquinas would say that if you just look at the desires in themselves, they're not good or evil, but they do have a tendency, in really falling upon original sin, they have a tendency to be opposed to the true good. They aren't always as such, but that's kind of the way we're born, with kind of loose desires. And really the moral life is changing who we are. And part of what we have to realize is that we're not stuck with our emotional desires. I mean, our emotional desires can be quite bothersome if we're trying to resist them because we know that it's not good to follow them or something along that line.
Again, like an example would be, we can know that if I'm already stuffed, but I love the taste of cake and ice cream, but I'm already full, I know that it's not good to eat more cake and ice cream.
But I want it nevertheless. Right?
Yes,
I want
I
it
do.
nevertheless.
Yes, I do.
So here you have your reason coming into play and recognizing, well, wait a minute, there are limits. And in the end, you can change those desires. Now, you do that in two ways. One is immediately you can modify the kind of emotion that you have, at least somewhat. And then in the long run, you can actually form your habits. A good example I use in the book for modifying your emotion right here and now is if you're angry because, say, you're driving. Lots of people in the United States get angry while driving. So maybe somebody has cut in front of you and you're angry at this. Aquinas says, well, your emotions follow upon an awareness, as we were just talking about. And if you can think about the matter a little bit more clearly, that might affect your emotions. So if you can For the emotion of anger, Aquinas says, it means you feel like you've been put down, right? Okay, you think you've been put down. So this person cut in front of me, and that's kind of putting me down. And so you can do a couple things. You can say, for instance, well, I'm really not that important after all, because if you've been put down, that means you thought you were somewhere up here to begin with.
That's right.
And if you recognize, well, maybe I'm not the best driver in the world anyway, so you're already putting yourself down at a lower level, then you aren't going to be put down as much by this person cutting in front of you. And that can affect your anger. It can at least lessen your anger, right, is the idea. We have this ability to control all of our emotions in some way or other. It's fairly limited given original sin, but the idea is if we work at it, if we repeatedly do this, we can actually change who we are. And today there's a lot of talk about neuroplasticity. We can change our brain.
What is neuroplasticity? I know neurons,
right?
And I know nerves is neuro in some ways, but it's not made out of plastic. At least so far, my parts aren't plastic.
I hope
they
not,
may put some in eventually.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure they're working on it.
Yes.
The neuroplasticity is the way that neuroscience speaks today about the way we can actually change the structures in our brain, the neuronal structures in our brain.
Okay.
And this will, in the end, change our behavior, change our desires. And all this, Aquinas living, 700 years ago wouldn't have been surprised at. I mean, he didn't know the details of neurons, obviously. But he knew that we can change our dispositions, we can change our desires, which is all that they're really saying with the neuroplasticity. It's kind of used in modern psychology as a tool to help people overcome some of their psychological problems, and it's a good tool. But really, it's the same tool that Aquinas had when he said we can change who we are by changing our dispositions.
And we can develop habits that become the more general pattern, and learn a certain peacefulness and joy at the good habits.
Absolutely. Sometimes we do something wrong and we say, just this once, or something like that. Well, there's no such thing as just this once in this life, because every choice we make, we're changing who we are. And so if we do something bad just this once, we've changed who we are, and it's going to be easier to do that bad thing next time. But what you're emphasizing is the good point. We can do the opposite. We can change our desires for the better. And that does lead to this kind of internal peace. The Eastern religions heavily emphasize this sort of internal peace, like Buddhism, for instance. And that's part of what's involved in fulfillment. It's not all. But, a lot of times, our society, we've got so much angst, so much trouble inside ourselves that Aquinas is saying, well, it doesn't have to be that way. We can train ourselves to have a more interior peace.
Yep. Well, they're training me to take a break for a little bit of peace. We're going to take a break right now, and we want to hear some of your questions and your comments, as well as those of our studio audience. So please stay with us. All right, thank you. Welcome back. Before Before we go to our questions, we want to remind you about a save the date announcement. This will be for our next EWTN family celebration. It's coming up in November 3rd, 2018. It'll be in sunny Jacksonville, Florida, right there on the St. Johns River. It's real pretty over there. And there's also a lot of beach and all that. That's nice. And we'd like to have you join us for this one-day only event. It's a free event. It'll be at the Prime Osborne Convention Center on November 3rd. If you want more information, you can go to EWTN.com/family celebration. And we'd love to see you over there. And I've been to Jacksonville many times over the years, and it's a great community, and I urge you to come and join us, especially those of you living in Florida. All right, you ready for some questions?
Certainly.
Well, let's see what we have. Let's start off with someone named Thomas. Thomas, where are you calling from?
From Tennessee, Father.
Great. And your question?
My question is very short. I've always wondered why Thomas Aquinas chose to be a Dominican. Dr. Jensen, do you have any insight on this?
Perhaps a little. We don't know, obviously, in great detail. What's interesting is that his family very much wanted him to be a Benedictine. He was a younger son and of a fairly large noble family in Italy. And one of the things that they did is they sent their younger children off to be oblates. This means an offering. He would go live with the Benedictines, not forced to be a Benedictine, as he indeed didn't become one. But the idea would be he would be learning the life of the Benedictine and eventually might choose to become a Benedictine.
And didn't they even hope that he'd become a Benedictine abbot?
That's what's believed.
Yes.
The Benedictines were pretty influential and powerful. They had lots of land associated with their abbeys. And you have a very wealthy, powerful Italian family, and it might be nice to have their young Thomas to be an abbot who has control over a influential Benedictine monastery. So that's widely believed, at any rate, that was part of the motivation that may have been underlying sending him there. Whether that's the case or not, in the end, he decided he didn't want to be a Benedictine. He wanted to be a Dominican. The Dominicans had just really started, one generation before St. Thomas would be entering the Dominicans. And they were similar to the Franciscans in that they were friars, and so they had this pretty extreme vow of poverty, unlike the Benedictines that owned, not as individuals, but as a community, owned these large tracts of land, and land meant power in the Middle Ages. The Franciscans and the Dominicans could own nothing. And so there was poverty there. In addition, they had the irritating habit of preaching the gospel, which a lot of the Benedictines didn't go down that road too much at that time. I mean,
Yes.
There was a fair amount of corruption. And so the family didn't like the idea. Again, we're not absolutely sure why that might be the case. It might be, as you suggested, because, these are upstart Dominicans. They have this irritating habit of preaching the gospel and things like this. And they were pretty adamant about it, so much so that they locked young Thomas up, he'd be a teenager at this time, in one of the family castles, and basically said, you're not getting out of here until you say you're not going to become a Dominican. Well, he wouldn't say that. They got really desperate and sent a prostitute into his room to seduce him. He wouldn't become a Benedictine abbot then.
She got locked in too.
Well, yeah, she was in the room at any rate, locked into the castle in general, but she did get chased out of the room because he took a piece of wood and out of the fire, got it good and hot, and chased her out of the room, so he was not seduced, as the family, again, had hoped, just to stop him from being a Dominican. Ultimately, it was the Pope who put pressure on the family, and the family had been involved with wars between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope. Initially, they were on the side of the Holy Roman Emperor, but they switched sides and started fighting on the side of the Pope, and the Pope said, you know, that Thomas, maybe you should let him go. And they did. They didn't say, you can go, but they allowed him to escape. And so he escaped, and he did become a Dominican. So one can imagine, I mean, you're talking about not just a brilliant person, you're talking about a very holy person. St. Thomas is a very humble man. And so you can imagine he's put into this position of somewhat of power and wealth in the Benedictine situation, and His Holiness is really pushing him away from that. So I would say that would probably be a dominant reason for his choice.
Yeah, and you know, given that the Benedictines at the time, many of the monasteries had so much land and economic power, they had serfs, there was a lot of trade, that could be to the family's economic advantage for trading for food and other goods.
Exactly.
Whereas with the Dominicans, there would be nothing like that. They were just preaching out there. All right, sir, where are you from?
Johnstown, Colorado.
Welcome. And your question?
My question is the difference between a philosopher and a theologian. Now, our shepherds, when they're in the seminary, and they're going to be our shepherds, are they taught both philosophy and as a theologian, and they pass that to us? Is there a disconnect between one and the other, so that as a layperson, do I follow the theologian or the philosopher?
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Good question.
Well, let's hope there's not a disconnect. There shouldn't be a disconnect, okay? Thomas speaks about there's really only one truth, and that one truth has only one source, namely God, right? So if theology is telling us the truth and philosophy is telling us the truth, there's no way that they really can come in conflict with one another. There's only one truth, only one source of truth. God is not going to be contradicting himself, right? Now, it is the case that a lot of philosophy is bad philosophy. You know, the liberal arts are a great thing, and they're on hard times in our day and age. I like to recommend to study the liberal arts, including philosophy, but at a lot of universities today, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a recipe for corruption more than anything else. But if you've got good sound philosophy, it's going to agree with good sound theology, which is why the popes, and not just Leo XIII, but every pope since him, has recommended the study of Thomas. He is a theologian, of course, and so they're recommending the study of him as a theologian, but Leo XIII was quite explicit as recommending him for the study of philosophy and not just for theology. And it's important to have more than theology, and which is why the Church requires that our seminarians do study philosophy. It's important for several reasons, and again, this is really just picking up on what Leo XIII says. It's important in part because it's one thing to believe something because of the faith, but it's another to be able to say, yes, this makes sense, and it's true. Even for those people who don't believe the truth of the faith, I can still show them that the faith makes sense because it has some basis in philosophy. So it's why, for instance, the Church teaches, this is a matter of faith, that we can prove the existence of God. Mm-hmm. That it's not easy to do, mind you, but it is something that is possible to do, that we can prove God's existence. So we have these atheists, the four horsemen of the atheists these days who are proclaiming that atheism is the only rational way. Well, no, it's not. And if you don't have good philosophy, you're left thinking, oh, well, I guess I just have my faith, which contradicts really sound reasoning, what science would tell us, or something like that. So ultimately, it's very important for that reason. It's very important, I think, because looking at the area we've been talking about most today, about morals, it's important. It can actually help us gain better control of our moral life if, in fact, we have an understanding of these things, and not just faith. Faith is important. It's absolutely necessary. But it's also very important to understand why certain things are good and why certain things are bad.
Yeah, in seminaries, certainly we are required to have philosophy. I believe in my day it was 30 hours. I think it was 30 hours, because I did more. I did 36. But then we had to do yet more theology. And when I was studying theology before ordination, there were a number of students who were coming into the program, but they were not going to the priesthood, but they wanted a degree in theology. And they had not studied philosophy. And the problem was the professors had to start over again every course to give them basic principles of philosophy, because theology uses philosophy as a tool. That's why I believe it's St. Thomas who said theology is the queen of the sciences and philosophy is its first handmaid. Absolutely. You know, this is, they work together. Well, let's go to this other question we have on caller. Hello, Rodney? Rodney, you there?
Yeah, good evening, Father Mitch.
Good evening. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Florida.
Great. And your question?
Yes, first of all, thank you for your priestly service.
Oh, and pleasure.
My question for Professor Jensen is relative to some earlier comments he made. You discussed the consequences of bad ideas. And my question really centers around what you also spoke to, which is the current culture's fundamental misunderstanding of human nature and what it means to be human. And do you believe that this fundamental misunderstanding has led to the rise of the so-called transhuman movement and artificial intelligence and machine learning, which their ultimate goal is to put human consciousness in a machine? And if you could respond to that and any consequences you might see from that very bad idea, I'd appreciate it. And I'll hang up and listen to your response.
Thank you, Rodney. Very interesting question.
Yeah. Well, with regard to artificial intelligence, I would like to distinguish sort of milder form from what you're speaking about, Rodney. The self-driving cars, which of course got a bad rap with an accident with an Uber car recently, but that's a kind of artificial intelligence, right, which is really can be quite helpful to have these tools at our hands with artificial intelligence. But what you're talking about is the idea of taking the human brain and somehow uploading it to a computer. That's what these transhumanists are talking about. And they're talking, the term transhuman, if you're unfamiliar with it, means to go beyond being human. So the idea is we can change ourselves in dramatic ways, maybe by genetic engineering, maybe by using computers, various things like this. So much so that by the time we get done making all these changes, we've ended up with something that's transhuman. It's beyond human being. And these people are proclaiming it as the next great age. It's, for them, a wonderful thing because ultimately this will be something much better than human beings, is the idea that they have. And I think you're right on the mark by saying that, this ultimately is rooted in a misunderstanding of human nature, a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Part of the misunderstanding is just thinking that we're somehow or other disembodied consciousness. And so then it's just a matter of satisfying desires that this disembodied consciousness has. And we talked about that a lot in the earlier session of the show tonight. And so there's no idea of us as a human being as embedded in our bodily nature. So we emphasize that we're spiritual nature when we were speaking earlier, but we can't forget that we're bodily. And our body has its purposes as well. And ultimately, we understand these purposes and we understand limits of what we can do. So again, a lot of the sexual ethics is that way. The fact that there is limits on sexual activity has to do with the nature of our bodily power of reproduction, that it's ordered to new life and to raising that new life in virtue. So that means it should be kept within marriage. And it has implications about in vitro fertilization and things along this line. And I think it has implications about this transhumanism, because it tells us how we are supposed to bring human beings into the world. And it tells us that our good is a shared human bodily good as well. And so creating something transhuman, which, by the way, I don't think can be done, that's another matter, but just the very goal that they have, creating this transhuman is something that is taking us away from our nature.
Yeah. And along with that, I had a very fascinating conversation with a young man who works in the computer industry when I was on an airplane. And he was discussing how one corporation is designing chips that can be put into near the brain and will be able to read your thoughts. That's one of the things they're planning to have done by 2020, and maybe even 2019. So, these will be things that are very important questions we'll have to deal with. Do we want machines reading our thoughts directly, if indeed they can? So that'll be another issue. You have another caller. Hello, Robert.
Yes, Father. It's good to be able to talk to you.
Where are you calling from?
Father. Camdenton, Missouri.
Great. And your question?
Yes, it's a simple question, Father. I haven't studied St. Thomas Aquinas' writings so much at all. I went to a Protestant seminary, and I'm now a Catholic at St. Anthony Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Just wondering, Father, what if simply someone would have asked St. Thomas Aquinas or any of his students, would simply have asked them, do you believe there's a God, or do you believe in God? A simple question like that. Just wondering how you might be able to expand on that, please.
All right. So, in other words, how would St. Thomas, would he be able to demonstrate that God exists?
Well, St. Thomas is famous for giving the 5 ways or 5 proofs for the existence of God. And unfortunately, today, a lot of times there's an abuse of this, because these arguments are presented, as Aquinas does, in very brief format to young students, and then they're dismissed with arguments against it. And part of the difficulty here is that Thomas really said, look, yes, we can prove the existence of God, but it's not the first thing that we're going to do. And so it shouldn't be there in your introductory philosophy course or something along that line. It takes time. He's purported to have said that you really shouldn't do metaphysics until you're 50. He died at the age of 49. But the idea behind that saying is, look, there's a lot of background work that has to be done before you're going to be proving the existence of God. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, fundamentally, all of the ways that Aquinas has for proving the existence of God says, look, there are some effects in the world around us, and we can go back and look for the causes of these effects. Ultimately, we're going to have to come to some first cause. So his first way, for instance, just says, look, things are moving about. One thing is pushing another thing, and we have to move back and look for an ultimate source of movement, and that ultimate source is going to be God. So yeah, ultimately it's always going to be looking at the causes of things, different ways of approaching those causes, but that would be involved in all of the arguments.
Robert, I might recommend that you go to a religious catalog. A couple months ago, I had Dr. Edward Facer on this program talking about proofs for the existence of God. And he has a book called 5 Proofs for the Existence of God that goes into it very well, including Thomas's proofs. And he laid out that program that you can see on YouTube. And you can also get his book that lays it out from a number of perspectives of showing the proof of the existence of God. And that may be well worthwhile. Now, this is one of the things that a lot of people would like to know is, can we teach young people, like high school students and then college students, these principles of St. Thomas and his philosophy and theology? Is it possible to get that across?
Well, as you know, I teach and I'm the director of the Center for Thomistic Studies at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And really, we're a unique program that's aimed precisely at that. What we want to do is train graduate students so that they can go out and teach. And so we have graduate students who are teaching in seminaries, graduate students who are teaching in colleges, and yes, graduate students who are teaching in high schools as well. And they are teaching philosophy in high school. Actually, you had one of our graduates here recently, Scott Sullivan.
Oh, yeah, Scott Sullivan is another one who has, Robert, this would be a good one for you too. He has a program on teaching logic, Aristotelian logic, which is the basis for, and it's a very clear program that you can have. And Dr. Scott Sullivan does a good job on that.
Right, exactly, and that's what we're trying to do. So yes, it can be done. As I say, some of the arguments of Aquinas are very difficult. But the principles can be given, and that's what I'm trying to do in my book, is to give the basic principles for somebody who's just interested in the topic. They don't have to have a degree in philosophy.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a very important element that you, with your book, Living the Good Life, A Beginner's Thomistic Ethics by Dr. Stephen J. Jensen, PhD, you can get that at EWTN's religious catalog. You can go online, EWTNRC.com, or you can call 1-800-854-6316. You can also get Scott Sullivan's work on learning logic. And that would be where you want to start the younger students, is in learning logic. And then also get Dr. Facer's books on the proofs for the existence of God. What I'm seeing going on with you, your institute, and other students going out, and other professors around the country, is a revival of Thomas that's taking place. And that's why this institute sounds very, very important, as the chaos of thought, has such a big impact on our culture. Having Thomas to undo the knots, to unravel the yarn, this would be a good thing. So thank you for what you're doing in your institute, and Dr. Facer and Scott Sullivan. Appreciate what you're all doing. Thank you. And unfortunately, we've run out of time, because there's a limit to that too. As a philosopher, we'll be able to teach you. So may the Lord bless all of you and cause his face to shine upon you, May he lead you in all of your ways by his peace. I bless you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we can bring good thinkers to help us in this modern time, like Dr. Jensen, and Scott, and Sullivan, and Dr. Fazer, and all of these good thinkers, only because this network is brought to you by you. You make it possible. And that's why we ask you to keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill. And we will be able to pay all of our bills too. Thank you, and God bless.